Hello, everyone. Welcome to News Now, the Belmont Journal's daily update on what's going on in the community of Belmont. I'm your host, Roger Colton. I have with me today Joanna Tzouvelis, who is the senior multimedia journalist for the Belmont Citizen-Herald. Joanna, thanks for joining us. There are ongoing developments about the proposed development on Beatrice Circle. Can you bring us up to date?
Sure, I can, Roger. If anyone isn't familiar, there is a 40B development proposed for a single residential lot in Belmont located at 91 Beatrice Circle. It's about a 23,500 square foot lot. They were approved for site eligibility by Mass Housing. They immediately applied for a comprehensive permit, which means now it goes to the Zoning Board of Appeals, our Zoning Board of Appeals. They had their first hearing on January 11th, which was just this past Monday, and they saw a presentation on the development, which is 12 four-bedroom units. There are a total of 5 buildings that will be going on the lot. There's one, which is a 4-story building that has 8 four-bedroom units, and then there are 4 separate 2-story single-family homes with 4 bedrooms each. In addition, each unit has its own parking garage, and then there are 8 parking spaces. They're applying for 10 waivers for the project. The Zoning Board of Appeals has to decide whether or not to give them these waivers. They're going to decide whether or not to approve or deny the application, and they also have to, and if they do approve it, there may be conditions, because there are a very long list of concerns, and the concerns were also outlined in the Mass Housing approval letter that need to be addressed. So the Mass Housing approved it, but they're not ignoring the fact that there are concerns, and the concerns are about traffic. The concerns are about access for fire and emergency vehicles, fire suppression, stormwater management. Those just name a few of the concerns.
And there is a hearing process.
Yes, so they have the Zoning Board of Appeals with 40Bs. There's also 180 days from the time of the application opens up, for hearing. So there's 180 days as a deadline. So the Zoning Board of Appeals, they just started meeting January 11th. They have until probably about July to start deliberating on this. So it's a quick process as well. And like I said, they just opened up the public hearings, but there's been some development since this first public hearing opened.
And that was presented at the January 11th hearing.
Yes. So there is a group of abutters that have formed a group that they call Build Wise Belmont, and you can learn more about that by going to buildwisebelmont.org. So they started this group to raise awareness about the project and educate people about 40Bs and the whole process. And what they did is they did an analysis to show that Belmont meets one of the safe harbor requirements with the state. And that is, I'm going to explain this to you. Sorry. The analysis shows that Belmont has more than 1.5% of land devoted to subsidized housing. That is the minimum is 1.5%. They did analysis that shows Belmont actually has more than 1.5%. So now the zoning board has scheduled another hearing, which is January 21st. And between now and January 21st, they'll be reviewing this analysis, and the town will be looking at it, verifying the information. And now the zoning board on January 21st has to decide whether or not to invoke the safe harbor based on this analysis. And safe harbor means that the town no longer has to be
subject to 40B.
Subject to 40B. Thank you very much. Subject to the provisions of 40B. Exactly. They can deny the special permit. So that is the decision they have to make on January 21st. And in the meantime, there's also a petition circulating. I'm not sure who originated. Actually, Belmont resident Amanda Lubarsky, who lives on Rutledge Road, which is not in a butter, but just part of the neighborhood. She started this petition asking people to, ask the ZBA to support this safe harbor support invoking the safe harbor. But again, it's all in the hands of the ZBA, and this hearing on January 21st, which is at 7 p.m., which will be live streaming on Belmont Media Center. There's also a Zoom link, which hopefully will allow for more participants, because this first hearing had 100-person maximum, and more than 100 people needed to get on and they couldn't, but luckily Belmont Media was live streaming. People could watch it on the media site or Xfinity or Verizon channels.
Roy Epstein,
Yes.
who is a member of the select board, warned folks that there are pretty strict guidelines about how to calculate the 1.5%. Can you tell us about what he said?
I can. Yes, because he did his own analysis along with planning board member Renee Guo. They did this analysis and they did it in June, and they came out with a percentage of a little under 1.4%. I believe it was 1.38%. However, they did not include the affordable units that are now part of the Bradford, because they weren't eligible at the time, but they are now. They've been eligible since August. So that's why the results of the analysis is a little bit different. But he said, Roy said there's complex rules on how to calculate the land area. You know, there's the numerator is all the area counted towards affordable housing, and the denominator is relevant land area of the town. And there's differences of opinion on how to apply the rules in the ways that the state agency, which is the Housing Appeals Committee, will accept. Now, it's very important to note that many other towns have tried this. I will name these towns: Stoneham, Norwood, Milton, Waltham, Arlington, Braintree, and Newton. They all tried to invoke this safe harbor, asserting that they achieved the 1.5% threshold, and they were all denied by the Housing Appeals Committee. That's been since 2014. I didn't get to mention, Roger, that the developer behind 91 Beatrice Circle is a Florida-based LLC called Comprehensive Land Holdings LLC. They're owned by the Tamposi family. And they are actually also currently in the process of having hearings for 40B developments in Milton. They actually were approved by Mass Housing to build 2 40B developments in Milton with a total of 250 units. And they're also awaiting approval for site eligibility from Mass Housing for 3 other 40B developments in Milton, totaling 116 units. I thought that would be of interest to people to know that it's not just Belmont that they're looking to do these 40Bs in, it's also Milton. And there's, if approved for site eligibility, they will have a total of 5 in Milton.
Now, with the Beatrice Circle, there is this upcoming hearing on January 21st, but there is also a deadline that by which people can submit written comments, correct?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up, Roger. The deadline is noon Friday, January 15th for public comment regarding the safe harbor. They also have a deadline after they meet January 21st. If they can't decide on whether or not they're going to invoke safe harbor, their deadline to do that is January 26th. And then depending on what happens, their next public hearing for the project would be February 8th. And at that time, they will be taking public comments during the meeting. If you write a letter to them, though, that is going to be considered a public comment. So if you want to speak publicly at the meeting, don't send your letter, just raise your hand at the meeting. I'm sure they'll have a limit on how much time for public comment, but they will allow it at the February 8th hearing, if hearings continue. We'll see what happens on January 21st.
That's great. Thanks for bringing us up to date.
Oh, also, a little bit of history that people may not know. There hasn't been a comprehensive permit application. The last one that was approved in Belmont was in 2007, and that was for Royal Belmont, which I don't know if people are familiar with Royal Belmont. It's located at 375 Acorn Park Drive.
It is the Belmont Uplands development.
That's right. So that was the last one. So it's been a while.
Thanks for bringing us up to date. We've been speaking with Joanna Tzouvelis, who is the senior multimedia journalist for the Belmont Citizen-Herald. You've been watching News Now, the Belmont Journal's daily update on what's going on in the community of Belmont. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Roger Colton. I'll talk with you again next time.